I'm Brendan Vaughn, editor-in-chief of Fast Company. This is the third episode of Office Hour, my show about what it takes to lead in a world that never stops changing. For today's episode, I wanted to share a conversation I had on stage at Fast Company's annual Most Innovative Companies Summit. I talked with Pete Docter, the Chief Creative Officer of Pixar Animation Studios. Pete is one of the most influential figures in animation and has been instrumental in creating some of the most beloved animated films of all time. We talked about the massive success of Inside Out 2, AI's evolving impact on Hollywood, and what he learned about leadership from Steve Jobs. Here's my conversation with Pete Docter. Let's start by talking about the creative culture at Pixar. You know, we all want to foster creativity in our cultures. You guys are sort of the ultimate expression of that. So I would love to hear how you go about fostering that creative culture as both a creator yourself, a director, but also a manager of other creative people.
I mean, to some degree, we make cartoons, so we're starting out in a good place. But we really try to foster as much play as we can, goofing around, jokes on each other. We have mean caricature night, which is where we draw really nasty pictures of each other. So it's fun. You try to make it fun. And if you're not having fun, I do think for this kind of work, and maybe I don't know, you want to kind of turn off your frontal lobe and just rely on the more kind of primal, like you're channeling something, you know what I mean? So as much as you can lower the fear level and just make it playful and fun, that seems to produce the best work.
But that's interesting that you actually have the kind of scheduled goofy time or whatever. I love the caricature thing. I'm doing that.
Yeah, totally. You got
None of us can. Well, some of us can draw. Most of us can't. But so it's important to kind of create some structure around this, even at a company as creative as Pixar.
Well, yeah, there's a lot. I mean, literally, as a director, you walk in and you have your dance card, we call it, and every 15 minutes of your day is structured. There's no time to go to the bathroom. So you got to plan these things. It is a structured environment, and it is a little bit ironic to be like, okay, be funny now,
right?
Be creative now,
right?
You know, so it's the job though. So you have to both embrace that and push against it sometimes. I mean, there are times where you're just going and your assistant's like, yeah, we got to get to the next meeting, and you just have to say, give me 10 more minutes or cancel the next meeting or whatever. You have to kind of let the muse guide you a little bit, but you can't do that to a fault.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's crazy.
Right. Let's talk for a moment about Inside Out 2, last summer's monster hit for Pixar. That's what we celebrated in the Most Innovative Companies this year is the success of that particular film, which also kind of helped Pixar flex again. I don't know if you'd agree with that necessarily, but Pixar had a few less than spectacular box office results prior to that. So tell us a little bit about what Inside Out 2 did for the company and how that kind of landed internally.
Well, it's funny, you know, it takes as much work and effort to make something that doesn't make money as it does for something that does. And you can't really plan on this stuff. Sometimes you just hit the right little combinations of things. I think, you know, Pixar obviously was very fortunate at the beginning to hit a lot of different boxes. You know, we were creatively successful, financially successful, and awards. And that doesn't just go on forever. So you really don't just take it for granted, I guess. It's still to this day a very weird time in the entertainment business. Are people going to return to theaters? They haven't fully after COVID. Do they like anything other than sequels? That remains to be seen. There's been very few outliers. So it's a rough time. And all we can do is try to make movies that I think are led by us. We have to believe in them. You know, the director first, and me as well. We have to feel like there's something there. There's something that we're talking about that's vital, that speaks to us. And hope for the best.
Did the success of Inside Out 2 surprise you?
Totally. I mean, I thought, okay, a lot of people talked to me about the first one. I knew that there was some good feelings there, but I had no idea it would be our highest grossing film of all time.
Yeah.
You never know.
And how was that for you working with, forgive me, I don't recall the director of Inside Out 2.
Oh, Kelsey, yeah.
Yeah, so working with somebody internally that was sort of taking your baby and making the main character's like a year or two older, correct?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Kelsey did a fantastic job. He was very proactive at the very beginning, saying, I want this to feel like it's just an extension of the first one. So he was going the right direction. I guess my general thought was, if I pick the right people, there's this old adage, as a director, 90% of your job is casting. And if you cast right, you can kind of sit back and watch people do the right thing. And that seems to be true for us too. That 10% though, is where it gets tricky when things are not quite working. And that's where I feel like my learning as in this role has been, pick the right people, set them up in whatever way you can for success. And then when it doesn't work, I need to fully immerse myself in the front end. I try to separate, I mean, I don't know if this applies to what all you guys do, but with animation, there's like the planning and then there's the doing. And so what I've done with Kelsey and with others is really immerse myself in the planning. Keep them on the floor, guiding, steering. They are still the director. They're the doer, you know, and I'm helping them to figure out what it is we're doing.
Let's talk about Elio, which comes out in about 2 weeks.
Yeah, 20th.
20th. So Elio, which I saw yesterday, is a film about a boy who, this is a one-line summary, I'll be curious if you think this sums it up, who feels sort of so unwanted that he wants to move to outer space.
Right. Yeah.
And in many ways, it's a classic Pixar story. It is a rough time, you just alluded to this, a rough time for original IP in movie theaters, even for Pixar.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we saw last year, I'd like to actually get into the dynamic around this a little bit more, but Inside Out 2, that's your IP, but it's franchise IP. That is not an original story, obviously.
Right.
This is an original story. It's not impossible. We've seen Sinners break through. Sinners has been an extraordinary success, completely unique film, no real precedent for it other than, spoiler, it's a vampire film, but other than that, very original. So what gives you confidence that a film like Elio can break through in this moment?
Well, first of all, as much as we try to plan these things, there are some things, like these movies take 5 years to make. So what was I doing 5 years ago? I don't even remember. So that's where we made those decisions and the steamroller's going. So we can't just suddenly switch and swap it out with something that's a sequel. Second, for something to have a sequel, there has to be an original. So you got to take these risks. And I think we're trying to mitigate that we're basically doing 1-to-1. We're doing one original, one sequel. And more or less, that's trying to be our cadence. We've got to take risks. And that was something that Steve Jobs was big on, and Bob Iger as well, both amazing leaders, and trying to balance that sense of, okay, we need to deliver what people want, but also, I look at this as our job as directors. We have to find out what people want before they know it. Because if we just gave them more of what they know, we'd be making Toy Story 27 now.
That's another very Steve Jobs way of operating.
Yeah. Try to...
Someone doesn't know what they want.
Exactly, yeah.
Still, Pixar was kind of founded on the idea that we are not going to, maybe it's not fair to say they were founded on the idea that we're not going to do this, but founded on the idea that all of these stories are original, we're doing this a different way, we're not going to be, I mean, it was a different period in Hollywood, but the idea of sequels and all, I mean, that still was there.
Yeah.
So is it hard for you guys to kind of feel reliant on sequels when that was, in some ways, goes against the sort of creative DNA of the company?
Well, it doesn't really. I mean, our third film was Toy Story 2. So we've always been interested in exploring kind of a balance of new stuff. And when it really works, when you find these characters that have depth, it's really fun to go beyond. You'd think an hour and a half is plenty of time. Really, when you get in there, you have to be so judicious. It's like a poem. You have to be very selective in what you get to explore. So a sequel gets to go the next level down. And, you know, with Toy Story now, we're on Toy Story 5. So we really have gotten to probe a lot of what I like to look at as like human experience as seen reflected through a toy, which is really fun. I love exploring the original worlds and building things from scratch. But there, like I say, there is a real joy in plumbing deeper as well.
Right. I mean, it seems like there's real lessons in there for everyone about that balance between how much time you spend innovating adjacent to what you're already doing, or maybe entirely new from what you're doing, versus continuing to really feed and nurture with passion, not just in a sort of obligatory way, the existing value of your products.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've gone through at our studio a really interesting time where the first 15, 20 films were more or less made by the same 5 guys, more or less. And then they all left. And so now we have all new directors. Now, since then, a few have returned. We have Brad Bird, who's coming back.
Oh, is he coming back? Okay.
And he's writing and overseeing. He's not going to be directing Incredibles 3. And we have Lee Unkrich, who did Coco. He's doing Coco too. So we have some amount of balance now, which is great. But for a little while there, we had all new people. And it was a real challenge for all of us to figure out, how do you train people, take just the right amount of risk to throw them into the deep end, because it's a tough job.
Let's talk about AI and animation, which is a very, very active part of the broader conversation around AI and its impact on Hollywood. There's companies out there. I just recently read an article where in the same article, there was a company that called itself the Pixar of AI. They called it another company that called itself the Pixar of the internet. I'm sure you guys think you're the Pixar of the internet and the Pixar.
Pixar of Pixar, I guess.
The Pixar of Pixar. So thoughts on these comparisons? Like, what do you think when you read that? How do you all intend to use AI in your process?
Well, I mean, it's flattering that somebody would use our name as the apex of something. I mean, that's really cool. AR it's going to be an upset for everybody. We don't know how. I mean, we've been using AI in various ways for, I don't know, almost 10 years and continuing.
What are those ways, if I can ask?
Well, the most basic one that we've been at the longest, to render a frame of film, a single frame, and there's 24 of those every second, can take like 30, 40 hours. So rather than waiting all that time, we've developed software that allows you to finish it after 3. So it looks really chunky and blobby, and then the AI finishes it off instead of waiting for, another 30 hours. So that's been very productive. It's not jeopardizing anybody's job or anything like that. I think now the fear, of course, is that somehow it's going to take over other people's jobs. I mean, probably will. I think people using AI are going to be able to do stuff that we've not done before, which is, of course, the name of the game. It's always, you want to give something to the audience that they haven't seen before. And so as I look at it, it's an exciting new tool. When I started at Pixar in 1990, Toy Story came out in 95, every single press that we talked to said, how long until computer-generated actors replaced real actors? Everybody was worried about that.
Yep.
So that was 1995. It hasn't happened yet. I kind of feel like we're in a little bit of the same boat where AI is going to upset everything, but it's not going to replace all of us, because there is something about the human condition. That's the reason we go to movies. It's why we read or sing or, listen to music. We're trying to connect with each other. And I think you can just sense that when it's not there.
Yeah, I think that in live action, people want to watch other people.
Yeah.
They are freaked out when they feel that there's something manipulated about that. Respectfully, though, it is a little different with animation, where they're not real people in the first place. So maybe this isn't applied to Pixar. As you just said, you guys are the apex of this thing, and that's not just people who want to imitate you and become the Pixar of blank or blank, but broadly in the animation community, where would you rank the level of fear on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being least worried, 10 being most worried?
Oh, I mean, I've heard friends of mine say they can't even mention the word because it freaks people out. Now, that was granted a few months ago. Maybe people are starting to acclimate. I think at Pixar, there was a big fear maybe about a year ago, and now I think the artists are starting to understand, wait, this can be really cool in blank and different ways. Visually, sonically, we're using it we're exploring a lot of different angles on it. So I think the fear level is coming down, and people are starting to understand this could be really exciting.
Okay, let's talk about Steve Jobs.
Okay.
So Steve, as everyone knows, he was one of the original drivers of Pixar, became CEO, powered the company for much of years, along with Ed Catmull, John Lasseter, Pete, and others. What have you borrowed from Steve's leadership style, and what did you very much not want to borrow?
Okay, so Steve was a powerhouse. I think the thing that amazed me again and again, he could walk into rooms where he knew nothing about what was going on, sit for about 5 minutes, and analyze what the conversation was really about. And I think that came from years of practicing that. It's not something anyone's really born with. Maybe some people are better at it than others, but he really cultivated a sort of very high level, because it's so easy to get caught in the weeds and make decisions for the wrong reasons. And he was able to just go like, okay, bam, we're up here. What is the topic of discussion? And that applied to movies. He would always say, look, I'm not a movie maker. I don't know anything about this. I'm going to leave it to you guys. And then he would say 2 or 3 things that were brilliant. And part of it was because it was so well delivered. He was very concise. He was very articulate. All that, I think, was something that he cultivated and nurtured in himself that I've tried to do as well. Because I think, especially when leading people, going on blah, 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 blah forever is not the right way to communicate clearly. You got to be very pointed, repeated, and all those good things. So he was brilliant at that.
And what about anything that you were like, maybe I'm not going to do that?
Well, I think at Pixar, we saw the good side of Steve, at least from what I hear, people who worked at Apple, and there's all those stories of him like firing people in elevators and whatever. At Pixar, he was really pretty amazing at saying, this is not my business. I'm not going to come in here and direct this movie or tell you what to do. So other than, there are a few things, a few stories and whatnot that were scary, but
let's hear one.
Well, let's see. There's one that gets very long. I'm not getting into, but I think the other thing that he recognized, that I'm trying to come up with some dirt on Steve here, but I keep
honestly, I'm not looking for dirt. More just like he was such an intense leader, and would do the thing like, that's shit, or that's the greatest thing I've ever heard. Like there was these extremes.
Which sometimes is helpful, right?
Yeah.
Like at the beginning, you want to nurture something along. We always talk about like it's a little plant, it's just growing. And if somebody comes along and is too harsh, it's just going to get squashed.
Right.
So at the beginning, you need to go. But at some point, you need that clarity of this is great or it's not. And he was great at that. He would call, okay, this is something I've tried not to do, although my wife would disagree. He would call, especially the producers, at any time, day or night. 3 a.m, you're on vacation, doesn't matter. If Steve has an idea, he wants to talk to you about it, you're on. So I've tried not to do that. Although I still email people. I guess that's what my wife's trying to get me to stop doing during business hours only. Let's keep it to. Yeah. But you get passionate about this stuff, and I think that's where it came from.
It's fascinating to imagine how Steve, who died in 2011, would have functioned in the era of work-life balance.
Oh yeah.
That is just, I can't think of a leader who even thought about the idea of work-life balance less than Steve Jobs. So
he changed a lot over his career as his life.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever talked with Ed Catmull, who wrote Creativity Inc. He was the president of Pixar for years. He had a really first row seat to Steve's evolution as a human being. And I do feel like, for all of us, that's kind of a real joy, is to watch people change, watch them grow and deepen. And I think Steve did, for as intense and crazy as he was at the beginning, he did develop a real nurturing, loving side to him.
Yep. Thank you for indulging my my repeated questions on Steve Jobs. Let's talk about creative endurance, which is something that you have demonstrated over the last 3 decades. And I think it's especially notable given that you didn't bounce around. You stayed at this one company. So what can that teach everybody in this room about staying fresh, staying passionate, keeping the creativity level high when you are at the same organization for a long time?
Well, I don't pretend that I have anything secret for myself. I think it's just the specific circumstances. I think a lot of us at work say this to each other. At some point, it's less about talent and more about tenacity, just the ability to show up every day and chip away, because it's never great the first time. Never. All of our movies have been unwatchable at some point for a long time for some of them. And it's only by the end that you're finally able to, just through the sheer drive of people, that they're not going to give up. And that's a balance too, obviously. But I think the thing I would describe me staying there for so long are the people. I love the people, and not only as individuals, but as what they do. Walking in every day and seeing something that I thought of executed in a way more sophisticated and amazing way. I think everybody's always working to kind of make this thing better, and that's inspiring.
Yeah. You said something in there that I'd like to push on a little bit, which is the that, it's never right the first time. Your process, as I understand Pixar's process, it's extremely iterative and, just a million versions of everything. How do you balance that? And I think this is another thing that we all experience in our jobs. How do you balance the kind of, just like foundational belief that putting things through versions makes it better against noting something to death or way too many cooks in the kitchen? There's a very fine line between those two things. So how do you think about that?
Yeah, there's a built-in contradiction between a director-driven product and something that is for audiences. And I guess the way I look at it is, like when you make a present for a really close friend or you buy it, you want it to be great because you know who they are. And I look at the movies like that. I'm not making these movies for me. I'm making them for the audience. And so I want to know what they respond to. And that, I think, is we start with prototyping, we get feedback, and then we iterate. And then we just go around and around and around. So we make a version of the movie, first starting with scripts, and then with what we call story reels, where we could sit here and watch the whole movie. And then we get feedback from the audience, other directors at first, other story people at Pixar, ultimately from a crowd, a source outside. And then we make it again, we iterate. So that by the time you see a movie in the theater, a Pixar movie, we have made generally around 8 different versions of that movie in prototype form. So it's not quite as expensive as the final animation. It's just drawings.
Yep.
But I feel like and then to your question, I think that the trick is, how do you let it not just get watered down? I think the answer to that is, we call it the note behind the note. When people say, I didn't like this character, the instinct would be, oh, take it out or change it. But if you're thoughtful and go like, why? What is the note behind that? What are they poking at? That allows us to fix things based on our own guts, as opposed to just listening to what the audience is telling us.
Yeah.
And I think that's a crucial key part of the whole process. That John Lasseter was really brilliant. He was the director of Toy Story, Bug's Life, etc. He was great at really just analyzing, what are people actually saying here?
Yeah. There's that great story about, I won't name the executive, but how one executive involved in Toy Story was really pushing Woody to be like kind of a jerk.
Oh yeah.
And then then that just didn't work. So you came back around to the Woody that we all know and love from the film.
But he was also right, because he was too innocent at the beginning.
Okay.
Too namby-pamby. So we did need some sort of edge to him.
Right. Last question. We only have about 30 seconds left.
Okay.
Let's turn that observation you made about how Lasseter had the sort of front row seat to watching Steve evolve from one kind of leader to another. Ed, how does that apply to you? How have you changed as a leader from, say, I don't know how much leadership you did like before Monsters, Inc., but let's put it at, the first big film you personally directed up until the present?
Well, you should ask my wife, but I think I probably come from a little bit of a different perspective than most of you. I came from cartoon school. I figured I would be sitting drawing pictures of Mickey Mouse my whole life. And so to be thrust onto stage and directing people was not comfortable at all for me for years and years. I think watching other people, they seem to fall into 2 buckets. Either they're the, I don't belong here, I'm a pretender, I'm a fraud, or they're the, yeah, look at me, I'm in charge. And either way, I think the thing that I've learned is it's not about you. It's not about you. You as the leader are fulfilling a role that is vital to the organization, but it's not about you. It's about making this movie. We're all driven by, for us, it's all about the film. We're film driven, not filmmaker driven. It's all about creating this thing, and the director has a vital role in that, but it's not about you.
All right. Pete Docter, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Everyone. Office Hour is part of the Fast Company Podcast Network. Our show is produced by Yasmin Gagne and Matt Toder. Mix and sound design by Nicholas Torres, and our executive producer is Josh Christensen. Be sure to subscribe to Office Hour on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. You can also hear all episodes in the Most Innovative Companies podcast feed. If you like this podcast, leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice, or let us know in the comments of Fast Company's social media.